pastor that was dragging himself on the ground, Pastor Paul, the big guy in the blue shirt, he lost the use of his legs when he was a child because of polio. And so he drags himself using his hands. His legs are totally useless. And there we go. But he's a great guy. He's a great guy. The first time we were there, 2022, we were going out to a village, and he was going with us. So I'm turning and thinking at the same time here. So there were some young men that came because they knew he was going with us. We went to the church that Brother Stensis started, where that college is. The college is, it's unbelievable. The property just goes up. The bottom part is the church. Right next to that is where Pastor Paul lives. And then on the other side of that, there's some classrooms. That's where they do the teaching. And then you go up the hill, and there are facilities for people to stay, students to stay, married couples to stay, bathrooms, which consist of a hole in the ground, shower places for them to take shower, then like 2 or 3 sets of buildings like that as you're going up the hill. Then you get to the top, and there's another building. That's where some offices are. They used to have a radio station there, but the government made a lot of demands, and there had to be somebody from the government in charge of it, et cetera, et cetera. So they closed down the radio station. And but he uses what was the radio station to do his podcast from. It's all soundproof and all that, and that's his office. But Pastor Paul, they picked him up and put him in the car. I'm sitting in the back seat, and he's up front. And in Uganda, the steering wheel is on the other side, and you drive on the left side. Okay, and when you get out on the roads, it's suicidal. It's not insane; it's suicidal. I mean, it's just, the first time, after the first day, we landed at Entebbe, stayed overnight in Kampala, got up the next morning, and the 4-hour trip to get to Cairo took 8 hours, and that's just the way it is. But the GPS says it'll take 4 hours. No, it takes 8 hours. There are tens of thousands of motorcycles all around you, and they're going all different directions and carrying all sorts. I've seen 5 people on one motorcycle. Anyway, so we picked up Pastor Paul, and we go out, and we go out, get off the main road onto another road, and pretty soon the road is just dirt and holes, and you got to creep and crawl. And the joke is that when you come to a mud puddle in the road, you have one of the nationals get out and step in it. If he disappears, that you can't drive over that mud puddle. And they laugh about it. It's fine. But we finally got out to where the village is, and there were people waiting on us because they knew we had to pick up Pastor Paul. He's a big man. So like 3 young men, they get there, and we're getting our stuff out because we've got to go down the path to where this village is. And they hand Pastor Paul 2 or a set of flip-flops. And I'm thinking to myself, what's he need flip-flops for? And then I found out he puts them on his hands, and that's how he drags himself. So I was going to stick with him. Everybody else was just walking ahead. I'm going to stay with him. He stopped, looked up at me, and said, "Go ahead, brother. I'll make it okay." I said, "Okay." So I went on. So that's Pastor Paul. And every place that you saw there, I've been there. All the men that you saw, I know them. First time I was there, I was given the assignment to teach on 1 Corinthians chapter 5, I think it is, maybe chapter 4. I'm not sure. I'll look it up here. And so I had the whole chapter to do in that next session or the next day. And I'm looking. No, next chapter. Yeah, chapter 5. So my topic starts out, it is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles that one should have his father's wife. So that's my topic in that chapter. But it's all men, national pastors. I got done teaching this. I got done teaching this, and Brother Stensis got up and he said, "I'm under conviction." And I think I told this story here before, but I love telling it. And I'm thinking, wow, we just got done talking about fornication, and he's under conviction. And then he said, "Some of you have a wife, or you have a woman, but she is not your wife, and they're pastors. And because of the process, I won't go through it all again. He said, you have until the end of the year to get things right, or you cannot come back here next year." So fast forward a year till last August, I get there, and I get to go to one of those men's wedding. And I paid for it. And, money had been given to me for all sorts of things, for food and iron sheets that he talks about. And I had $100, and I gave it to Brother Stensis, and he gave it to the man so he could go ahead and have his wedding. So I got to go to a Uganda wedding, and it was unique. It was unique. You know, the sound that the ladies make. After everything that the pastor would say, they would do that for about 3 minutes. So the wedding that normally takes about 10 minutes, it took about half an hour, 45 minutes because of all the interruptions anyway, it was fun. In Uganda, they don't show affection in public. They won't hold hands. They won't give, the wife a kiss on the cheek. No affection in public, none whatsoever, because that's what you do in private. But anyway, so all those buildings, all those places, I have been able to, and I've mentioned this before, but I've been able to raise money to put roofs on about 4 churches, I think it is. And the most that it cost was $500. And so, but what was fun is walking towards that church that we raised the money for to put the iron sheets on, and there they are, brand new corrugated metal roofing. And it's just the poles in the ground, dirt floor, and what have you. And so anyway, they tried to honor me. I said, look, I wasn't the one that, I did not donate the money. I was just the middleman. I told people about it. Somebody else gave me the money. I got it. I sent it to you. And so if you're going to honor anybody, honor the people that gave the money. And so that was done. But anyway, so it's just fun. If you can ever go to him and spend some time with him, it'll just absolutely it'll change you. It'll change you. Well, we're going to pick up where we left off last night. 2 Peter chapter number 3. 2 Peter chapter number 3. We went through chapters 19 and 20 last night. And we ended up at the famous set of verses in Revelation 20, 14 and 15. It says, "And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." And that's where we ended. And then I read 2 Peter chapter 3, and I'm still not there yet. verses 1 through 13. Won't take time to read all of it. There we go. Get back to where we were. Okay. But it talks about, I'm just going to, 2 Peter chapter 3, let's see, verse number 9. Verse number 9. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long-suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. So the heavens are going to pass away. They're going to go away, and there's going to be a great noise, and it's going to disappear. And the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. So the earth, so the heavens, there's going to be the heavens that you see around us today, it's going to be gone. The earth as it is today is going to be burned up. And everything that's on the earth is going to be burned up. Now, that kind of tells me something. We shouldn't put so much stock in what we have, because it's going to break down eventually. It's going to get old eventually. It's going to be corrupted with rust or whatever. You're not going to use it. And so we need to make sure, and while we have these things, while we have the automobiles and our homes and everything, that's fine. He doesn't want us to live out he doesn't want us to be homeless. He doesn't want us to live without a place to go. And transportation is necessary and what have you. Unless you want to live like the people in Africa that have no running water. They have no gas stoves. They have no air conditioning. They have nothing. Nothing. Except very primitive tools. Of all the countries I've been in Africa, not very many, but a few, I've only seen 2 tractors. They were going down the road. They weren't in the field, but everybody out there, they have their hoe, and they just work the ground with that hoe. And but the heavens and the earth are going to go away. And then verse number 11 asks a question. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in all holy conversation and godliness? Looking for, and I'm going to put the word while looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of the Lord, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. Wherefore, beloved, seeing that you look for such things, be diligent, that you may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless, and account that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, even as our brother Timothy, Paul, also, according to the wisdom given unto him, hath written unto you. So I ended last night in verse 13, but verse 14, seeing that you look for such things, be diligent, that you may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless. That goes along with verse number 11, which asks the question, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in all holy conversation and godliness? So, while we are waiting for him to come back, while we are waiting for the consummation of everything, we are to be living in such a way that we'll be found of him with confidence and not be ashamed, as we quoted a verse earlier in the week. So we have all these prophecies, and I on purpose have avoided a lot of the prophecies because a lot of it requires assumptions, requires guessing, requires more than what we know sometimes. And so I decided just to go to chapter 19, Revelation, and 20 last night, and today will be chapter number 21. So I think in my mind that the verses I just read from 2 Peter, talking about the heavens and the earth being burned up and being totally changed, I think that happens somewhere between chapter 20 and 21. I don't know exactly when, but I think after verse number 15, because immediately in chapter 21, it starts out and it says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there's no more sea." So we already looked at that in 2 Peter chapter number 3. So this prophecy, and I mentioned this earlier in the week, how that God destroyed the earth and all the people with a flood 1,600 and some odd years after creation. And of course, Noah, his wife, and their 3 sons and their wives, 8 people got on the ark and they lived through the flood. And God said, "I will not destroy the earth with a flood again." That was a promise that God made, but He's going to destroy it with fire. It's going to be awfully hot for all the elements to melt. I was going to look up, and maybe you know, I don't know, what is the hottest temperature to burn and to destroy the hardest of elements. I have no idea. Maybe you know, I don't know. Do you know anything about that, Lex?
Depends on what you're using to burn.
What's that?
Are you using a nuclear reaction to burn, or is it using fire?
Fire, I'm guessing.
We can't make a fire hot enough to do that.
Okay. Well, there has to be something that happens then.
God happens.
Yeah, God happens. Exactly right. He can, yeah, God happens. Yeah, that's good. I like that. So there's a new heaven and a new earth. But it asks the question, now that you know these things, what manner of people should we be? And it tells us we're to live in such a way that we live a godly life. Turn to Titus. I just thought about this. Titus chapter number 2, I think it is, just before the book of Hebrews. Titus chapter number 2. A lot of people are using grace as an excuse to do whatever they want to do. Okay? They used to have standards. They used to believe the King James Bible is the Word of God. They used to preach and teach a holy life and what have you. And I know some of these people. I know many of them. But in verse number 11, it says, in Titus chapter number 2, verse number 11, it says, "For the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men." That's not a period, there's a comma, so the thought continues. So grace of God, the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men, teaching us something. What does grace teach us? And it has to do with our salvation. Teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. So, yes, we're saved by grace through faith. It is not of works, lest any man should boast. We are not saved because we're good people. We're saved because we know that we're sinners and we trust Christ for our salvation. Totally. Plus and minus nothing. If you put 0.1% of works in there, then it's not salvation. There's no works involved. It is trusting Christ, period. But once we trust Christ, you know, there's a couple verses in the Bible, I forget where they are, talks about how that we're to live according to the vocation that we've been called in. Well, God is holy, and He wants us to live a holy life, a godly life, a denying worldly lusts. We are to deny ungodliness, and what have you. I mean, I've got a situation in my life right now where recently I had to rebuke somebody. They kept pushing and pressing the issue, and finally I just had enough. And I confronted this person about some things in their life. And I said, it's not right, and you know it. But excuses are made and what have you. Now, but we have, back in Revelation 21, we have this wonderful scene now that's starting to take place. Before chapter 21, we have the vials and we have the trumpets and we have the wrath of God. We have all the judgments on mankind in this time period from chapter 4 all the way to chapter number 21. We have the dead in Christ that are raised at a different time. But here in chapter 19 or chapter 20, verse number 12, and I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were open. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which are written in the books according to their works. The sea gave up the dead which are in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which are in them, and they were judged every man according to their works. Death and hell were cast in the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So it's like from chapter 4 all the way to chapter 20, it's doom and gloom. It's the wrath of God on the earth and on the people of the earth. It's unusual things happening. A third of the grass is burned up at one time. A third of the trees are destroyed at one time. A star falls into the water, and the water turns to blood. Not all of it. And a lot of the sea animals die. And so we see all these things in there, intermingled with some positive things every now and then, talking about who shall open the seals, and we find out, of course, it's Jesus who has the right and the authority and the ability to open the seals because He died for our sins. So sprinkled in there every now and then is some good stuff. But up until the end of chapter number 20, it's like whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. If that much time is spent in a book with prophecies about what's going to happen on the earth, then yes, we ought to be living in such a way that we represent God on the earth, not perfect, we're sinners. But again, that doesn't give us an excuse to do whatever we want to do, because grace teaches us we're to deny ungodliness, we're to deny worldly lust, we're to live righteously in this present world. I think that little phrase, in this present world, was not only good for Peter's time, but it's good for our time. And especially in our time. Because look at the sinfulness of man outside there. They don't know what they are. They're trying to change what they are. And I may have upset some people one day, but I said there's no such thing as a transgender. You cannot. You can may have all the operations you want to have. You can take all the medications you want to take. But there's no such thing as a transgender. If you're born a man, that's what you are. If you're born a woman, that's what you are. You can try to change things. In God's book, turn to Psalm, what is it? 130 something. Psalm 130 something. I'll find it here in a minute. I think it's 139. But I'm not positive. It's been a long time since I looked at that one. 139. Yes. Psalm 139. Go down to verse number 13. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance. When does God recognize conception, someone who's conceived? My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written, which in continuance were fashioned, when as yet there was none of them. These women go around talking about, it's my body, I can do to my body what I want to do. Yeah, you can, but what about the body inside of you? It's just flat out murder. And the way they tear those babies apart, limb from limb, with no kind of medication to take away any pain. It's my body. That's pathetic. How should we live in this present world? Righteously. Godly. And if people don't like it, it doesn't matter. We're still to stand up for what this book says. I've lost friends. I've made enemies. But this book tells me what to do, and this book tells me how to believe, and this book tells me how to walk. Just this year, just in the past few months, there's a church I've gone to many times in where are they? Illinois. And because of some of the things that they've been doing, I got in touch with them and I said, I will never come to your church again. And friends of years now don't want to have anything to do with me. But it's because of the false teachings that they were getting involved in and inviting people that believe in a works salvation to come in and preach in their Baptist church that says they don't believe in a works salvation. The man that was invited, he used to belong to the major Methodist church. Well, he's still a pastor of a Methodist church, and they separated from that group, and I'm glad he did, because he separated that group because of their belief in homosexuality. So there's Methodists that have left the major Methodist congregation, and I asked that pastor of that Baptist church, does that man that you are having to preach in your church, does he still believe in sprinkling babies for baptism? That's heresy. It's flat out heresy. It's false doctrine. It's false teaching. He didn't answer my question. And I said, you are confusing your people now and saying it's okay for him to come and preach in your church, and you're causing confusion. Well, that was the end of the conversation. And I've already determined that if he makes a public apology for having that person come in, which I doubt that he will, but if he did, I still would not go back there to preach. Because there would be people who maybe have not heard the public apology or did not read it, And they would see me going to that church, and they would say, well, Brother Mann is going to a church that allows that to happen. I'm not going. There are certain things I won't. There's a certain kind of shoe I won't buy. Not because the shoes are wicked, but when I see those shoes, I think of critics of us. You see what I'm saying? I'm very narrow-minded. I'm very narrow-minded. I'm not perfect. God knows I'm not perfect. I mean, I have to ask for His forgiveness regularly because of the stupid things I do or think or say. But here now in chapter 21, we're getting to the good stuff. Because now the heavens and the earth are new. And I, John, saw the holy city. It's not Rome. Okay. I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem. New Jerusalem. I've seen pictures of Jerusalem. They've got some tall buildings there and what have you, but they also have ruins from David's day and on back. You got the Dome of the Rock supposedly sitting on the place where the Solomon's temple was built and what have you, though it could have been built in another location. There have some conflict about that, but I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. By the way, we are the bride. Jesus is the groom, or the husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, those that are not thrown into the lake of fire. The tabernacle of God is with men, and He will dwell with them, and they shall be His people, and God Himself shall be with them and be their God. I think the world is going to be completely burned up because it needs to be purified, because right now it's corrupt. Things, you let your house sit very long by it with nobody in it, it just starts falling apart. The earth is corrupt. The earth has been damaged. The earth is a mess right now. And I think it has to be purified because God Himself is coming to the earth. And it says, He will dwell with them, and they shall be His people, and God Himself shall be with them and be their God. Turn to Isaiah chapter 65, verse number 18. Isaiah 65, verse number 18. I'm getting spoiled using this thing here. It says, but be ye glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing and her people a joy. And I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people, and the voice of weeping shall be no more heard in her, nor the voice of crying. Now, why did I emphasize that? Well, look at back chapter 21, verse number 4. And God Himself shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. So I think there in Isaiah 65 is a bit of a prophecy talking about how that God Himself is going to be with us, the tabernacle of God is going to be with men, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Go back to chapter 7, verses 16 and 17. Chapter 7, verses 16 and 17 says, they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them, and they shall lead them unto living fountains of waters, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. So every now and then, even in the book of Revelation, you see glimpses of what's going to happen in the future after the new heavens and the new earth. So it's kind of interesting. So that was Revelation chapter 17, verse number 15 and 16. I'm sorry, chapter 7, verses 15 and 16. Chapter 4, verse number 2. Go back a little bit further. Chapter 4, verse number 2. Chapter 4, verse number 2. Oh, I went back too far. Chapter 4, verse number 2. And immediately I was in the Spirit, and a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he that sat was looked upon like jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne in sight like unto an emerald, and all that. So that's talking about God Almighty. But God Himself will be with us. God Himself will be on the new earth. And before that happens, the New Jerusalem comes down from God out of heaven. And so let's look at some of the things. Verse 5, and he that sat upon the throne, which I talked about in chapter 4, and he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. So he re-emphasizes again his veracity. He said, these are true and faithful. These things will happen. I'm looking forward to the day when there's no more death. I'm looking forward to the day when there's no more pain. I live with pain sometimes. I went in the Navy in 1969. I got out of the Navy in 1969. I told them I had back issues before I took the oath, and they did a physical and what have you. Not very thorough. But I told them, I said, I've got this problem. And so 5 months and 10 days later, they gave me a medical honorable discharge because of my back. That's when I was 18 years old. It's not any better today, guaranteed. And just like yesterday, I said it must be 2:30 because my back hurts. I had to get off my feet. I had to lay down. I had to rest. I got done resting. My back was fine. I get up and I'd go out and walk again. Inflict my own pain sometimes. I'm looking forward to the time when there's no more pain. Ecclesiastes chapter 12 talks about the body of an old person. The grinders will cease because they're few. I'm looking forward to getting all my teeth back. It makes it a whole lot easier to chew food. I mean, sometimes it's like, which side do I chew this on? Because I've got teeth missing. Right now, I don't have my hearing aids in, so I will say what a little bit more when you talk to me today. I'm just giving my ears a rest. And he said unto me, It is done. Verse number 6, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. Okay, go back to 1 John. He that overcometh. 1 John chapter number 5. He that overcometh. 1 John chapter number 5. Verse number 1. 1 John 5:1. Whosoever believeth that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. And everyone that loveth him that begat him and everyone that loveth him that begat loveth him also that is begotten of him. By this we know that we are the children of God when we love God and keep his commandments. By the way, keeping his commandments is not legalism. Don't let anybody tell you that. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. Now, remember it said verse 1, whosoever believeth that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. Verse 4, for whatsoever is born of God, what's that next word? Overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. Who is he that overcometh the world? But he that believeth that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So there in Revelation chapter 21, it starts talking about overcoming. Now go back to chapter number 2. Revelation chapter 2. In the separate letters to the 7 different churches, That's in chapters 2 and 3 of Revelation. In verse 7, it says, let he that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith in the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Verse number 11, he that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. Verse number 17, to him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone. That white stone is an interesting study. I have a message on it I preached some years ago, but the white stone, if you were a faithful slave, a faithful servant to somebody who owned you, and they wanted to give you your freedom, they would give you a white stone. And that was like the deed. And they would give you that white stone, and on the back of that white stone, he would write his name on there. The master's name would be written on there. And so he would say, I'm setting you free, and here's the white stone. By the way, if you ever need anything, because you've been such a faithful servant, on the back of here is my name. You just show people that, and you can get whatever you need, and I will pay for it. Boy, isn't that a picture of salvation? Wow. Another thing that I ran into about the white stone is if you were being accused of murder or some crime, the judge would have a white stone on his desk and a black stone on his desk. If they found you guilty, he would give you the black stone, and you would go out and be punished immediately, even to death. But if he gave you the white stone, he's saying you're innocent, you're set free. And so the white stone there does have some significance. It was an interesting study. But he said in verse number 26, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron. Now I'm looking into those set of verses. But anyway, chapter 3, verse 5, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Verse number 12, him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem. So New Jerusalem is mentioned here in Revelation chapter number 3. But there's another verse number 21, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne. And so there again, in verse number 6, I'm Alpha and Omega, back to chapter 21, beginning in, I will give unto him that is athirst the fountain of water life freely. He that overcometh shall inherit all things. So there's all sorts of promises to he that overcometh, and I just love those promises. Just thought I'd point them out. But here's the negative part in this chapter. The fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake with burns of fire and brimstone, which is the second death. But if you remember, he that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. Don't have to worry about it. But we do need to tell other people so they can avoid that. Verse 9. And there came unto me, now we're going to get into the New Jerusalem. And there came unto me of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials full of the 7 last plagues, and talked with me, saying, Come hither, and I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me that great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God, and her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And of the east, on the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. By the way, you study out the order of the nation of Israel as they traveled through the wilderness, and that's the same order that they would tear down the camp and move with. But anyway, and the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and in them the name of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. So the gates, the 12 gates, each one had a name of the tribe of the children of Israel. And the foundation, had 12 foundations, and in them the names of the 12 apostles. And he that talked with me had a golden reed to measure the city, and the gates thereof, and the wall thereof. And the city lieth foursquare. Okay? So it's like a Rubik's Cube. Okay? It's foursquare. I mean, it doesn't have all the colors, and you don't have to do all that. But it's a cube. Okay? Verse number 16. And the city lieth foursquare, and the length is as large as the breadth. And he measured the city with a reed, 12,000 furlongs. The length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. So this is a cube that the width is 12,000 furlongs, the breadth is 12,000 furlongs, and the height is 12,000 furlongs. Now you ask, Brother Mann, break that down into English for me, okay? It's about 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles. I multiplied all that because in my thinking, okay, let's put one person per square mile or per cubic mile. Okay? So you have 1,500 going this way, 1,500 going this way. That's just the first level because there's 1,500 levels. How many people, if we put one person per cubic mile, how many people, and I don't think it's going to be this way, but it's just gives you an illustration of how big this thing is. How many people would fit one person per cubic mile? Okay, 1,500 by 1,500 by 1,500. It multiplies out to 3,375,000,000 cubic miles. So that's the volume of the cube. Okay. Then, verse number 17. And he measured the wall thereof, 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of the angel. A cubit is about 18 inches, which some say is about the length from the tip of your finger to there, maybe a little plus or minus, depending on your arm. So it's about 18 inches. Well, you multiply 18 inches times 144, and then you divide it by 12, and the wall is 216 feet tall. I never figured that up until last night. And the building of the wall was, as it were, of jasper. The city was pure gold, like unto clear glass. And the foundations of the city were garnished with all manner of precious stones. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth an emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth sardius, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth a topaz, the 10th, however you say that word, the 11th a jacinth, and 12th an amethyst. And the 12 gates were 12 pearls. That must have been some big oysters. Okay. Each gate is just one pearl. I think I disappointed my wife. She appreciated what I bought her, but I think she was disappointed because it was our 50th wedding anniversary. I looked and looked and looked. I couldn't afford anything that was made of gold. I mean, this really, really thin chain, I mean, super thin chain, it was made of gold. But it was like $900 or something. And if you tried to sell it, you wouldn't get $900 for it, by the price of gold and everything. It wasn't even close to an ounce. Okay. So I bought her a string of pearls, a pearl necklace. So I gave it to her. We're sitting and getting ready to eat and everything. And I pull out this box and I gave it to her. And when she opened it up, it was like she was expecting gold. It was our 50th wedding anniversary. She wouldn't say she was disappointed, but just the look on her face. And I've never told her that, so cut that out of the thing. But the gold here is like unto clear glass. I mean, pure gold, clear glass. A guy died. Before he died, he made sure that in the will he was able to take all of his gold with him. So in the casket they put his gold, so he could take it with him. Well, he gets to heaven and he goes up to St. Peter and he's got all this gold with him. St. Peter looks at him and says, well, we're glad to see you, but why are you bringing road material? To us, it's not road material. To us, it's gold. I mean, an ounce of gold has gone up like $600-700 an ounce just recently. It's crazy. We have 1 ounce. We invested in 1 ounce, and so far we've made about $700 on it. But that's asphalt to heaven. But it says here the city is pure gold, and I lost my place. Pure gold, like unto clear glass. Verse 19, the foundations of all the city are garnished with all those precious stones. And I saw no temple therein. Verse number 21. 12 gates were 12 pearls. Every gate was 1 pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, as it were transparent glass. So the city itself and the streets are made of pure gold. The thing that's most valuable to us, we're just going to walk on it. And I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple, and the city had no need of the sun, neither the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth will bring their glory and honor unto it, or into it. Gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. They shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it, and there shall in no wise enter into it anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life. By the way, the only people that's going to be there are those who are written in the Lamb's book of life, because everybody else will have been cast into the lake of fire, which is the second death, whose names are not written in the Lamb's book of life. Wow. Tonight we'll look at chapter 22. I don't know about you, but I'm tired. You know, even younger people get tired. So, and we all have aches and pains. I'm watching you. He's flexing his leg, and he's got the, you know, I pulled up to his house the other day, and he opened the door, and he's standing there with a cane. I'm thinking, oh, you're getting old too. It's because of his leg. We all have physical problems, but we're all tired. But there, we won't be tired. We sleep at night, but there's not going to be any night. It won't need any sleep. It'll be absolutely perfect. Don't have to worry about what temperature it's going to be, because it's going to be absolutely perfect. Don't have to worry about whether or not there's going to be an ice storm, because there's not going to be an ice storm. It's just going to be perfect. But not for those who are not written in the Lamb's book of life. They will not be in a perfect place. So let's do what we can while we're here. We know what the prophecies say, and I'm overtime, but it's Sunday, and I get double time on Sunday. Or maybe triple time. Yeah, well, And I just wanted to get through that. So I appreciate your patience this morning. I do. Father, thank you for the day.